Hi everyone, in this video I'll be talking about a tool which will help you predict or forecast the end date of your project if you're following a scrum methodology for your project. I've experienced that sometimes the project sponsor or your client is asking about the end date, and unlike waterfall in which you do follow a very detailed planning, in agile you go from sprint to sprint, so it may not be as evident how to forecast the end date of your project. So in this video, I'll teach you a tool that helps you to do so, accounting for different scenarios and the velocity of your team. Before going further, just wanted to note that this tool provides you a forecast, not an exact value. Of course, it in fact provides you with a range of forecasts, and then the strength of this tool depends on the frequency of the updates as well as the accuracy of the information that you input in it. Okay, let's get started. You, in this graph, see that you have a backlog. Now, initially in your project, you can only estimate so much, and your backlog is likely to grow. So you plot your backlog with an assumed growth rate. Let's say that 10 points or 5 points per sprint. And then you may say that, okay, after sprint 6, we'll have more information, so we can say that instead of 10, now the backlog will grow by 5 or 3 points. You can use percentages as well. It all depends on the nature of your project and your knowledge of it. So you have this blue curve here representing the story points on your backlog per sprints. The horizontal axis represents the sprints and the vertical axis represents the story points. Now, on the same graph, you plot 3 velocity curves. These curves represents the velocity of your team based on optimistic, green, most likely amber, and pessimistic scenarios in purple. And then the points at which your backlog intersects your velocity is the time that you forecast your project will be done because you have completed your backlog. Now, on the graph below, I have provide more information. So here, according to the optimistic scenario, you will finish your project after 6 sprints. And then according to the most likely scenario, 7, and based on the pessimistic scenario, about 10 sprints. Again, these numbers are not exact. They are only a range to help you forecast and get an idea. Now, the question is that how do you achieve the curve? If you go up, I have defined 2 tables. One of them tells you your backlog growth rate. So you decide, for instance, that how many points you want your backlog, or you expect your backlog to grow every sprint as you grow more stories. So in this case, in my project, what I did up until sprint 6, I had assumed 10 points per sprint, and then after that, I assumed 5 points. Why? Because by then, we were expecting that we have groomed enough stories and we have reached a critical mass of certainties so that there is less need for backlog to growth. And then the optimistic scenario, I was very contingent about it. So for the first sprint, based on the team, we decided that, okay, the team is meeting for the first time. They haven't had as much experience working together. So optimistically, we anticipated 20 points, most likely 15, and pessimistically 10. Second sprint, the team has worked with each other more. So optimistically, we said maybe we can even finish 25, but our most likely and pessimistic values stayed the same. The same trend actually continued, and as you see, sprint 3, we increased our most likely and pessimistic values as well, and then they almost stayed the same all the way through. Now, there is one useful row here, reduced velocity percentage due to known events and absenteeism. There are certain events that you can already plan for, such as people going on vacation or people being away due to a hackathon or something as such. So here we knew that on sprint 5 we had a quarterly planning, so about 50% of team's time was not contributing to the velocity because they were attending the quarterly planning. Sprint 6 we had one person on vacation. Sprint 7 we had more vacation. Sprint 8 we had actually stat holidays. So these percentages reduce and adjust your velocity so that your all these three curves are more realistic. And then the second table, and by the way, everything that you see here in this amberish color, you need to manually input, versus this table that except for one cell, the rest will auto-populate based on the above table. So this table calculates your cumulatives. So your backlog initially, in our case, it was 90, so we inputted it. And then it increased based on the backlog growth rate that we had defined above. So up until sprint 6, it added by 10 points and then by 5. The optimistic velocity, so it became cumulative. So here was per sprint basis. So first sprint we finished, we anticipated to finish 20, second 25. So by second sprint we cumulatively finish 45. Same thing here. First sprint we had anticipated 15, second 15, so cumulatively 30. And it continues so on and so forth. And also realize here that this value has been calculated in. So here your cumulative velocity doesn't increase as much because 50% of it is reduced because of known absenteeism. So, and then the cells here, if you notice, here is the first sprint at which your optimistic velocity exceeds your backlog, which is the sign, like shown in the graph, that you finish your backlog, you finish your project. And then this happens on sprints 8 and sprint 10 for your most likely and your pessimistic scenarios. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do that, so this is at the beginning of the project, okay? This was put at the beginning of the project. We had no actual data, except for the 90 that we had actually estimated. The rest of the things were assumed. Now, I'm going to show you how it happens once you are in the middle of your project, and hopefully your forecast becomes more accurate. Why? Because you'll have some actual data. So let's have a look at the examples with actual tab, and then I'll explain it to you as well. I'm going to show you how your scenario velocity-based forecasting will look like once you have some actual data. So one thing to note here is that up until sprint 4, which in this case is where we are now, we have only one curve. Why? Because these sprints are now in the past. It doesn't make sense to predict them. We have actual values. So we have plotted the actual values here. And then from there on, we'll keep with our estimation, and you can refine your estimation based on the past 4 sprints that you've had. And then your backlog also, up until here, is now composed of actual values. And then going forward is estimated. So in this scenario, as you see, optimistically, you finish at sprint 7, most likely at sprint 8, and pessimistically at sprint 9. Now, how do we populate the tables? Again, here, your top value, again, your top table includes information that you input, so you may have wanted to change your velocities based on what they were before. So what you do is that here in the second table, you put the actual values. So we knew that for a fact in sprint 1, we completed 10 points and we inputted for all 3 scenarios because it was an actual value. For sprint 2, we had completed 15, so the cumulative would have been 25 for all of them. And for sprint 3, we had completed 20. So again, the value is calculated here, is inputted here. And sprint 4, cumulatively by sprint 4, we have completed 70 points. From there on, anything is in white will be auto-calculated based on the above table. And then here also, I had actually, you need to input what was your actual value for these backlog growth rates. So you input based on the actual values. And what you get here is a more accurate results. Now, if you need this template, if you can find it useful, I have a blank version with an instruction guide on how to fill it out. So feel free to contact me, and I'm more than happy to send you a version of this template. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you find these videos useful, please subscribe to our channel and benefit from other tools and techniques that we will provide on project management, especially on the agile methodology. Thank you.